Hi, guys, and welcome to another edition of Too Many Cuts with me, Charles Burns. This is actually a re-recording because we spoke with Dr. Munaf a few days ago, and unfortunately the audio wasn't so great, so we decided to re-record it. And since then, some pretty big news for yourself. If you'd like to kind of tell the audience.
Yeah, so I've been temporarily promoted to consultant at a local hospital where I work to cover the coronavirus period. So that's been a big step up for me over the last few days. So that's quite daunting, but yeah, some good news to share with you guys.
So when they say temporary, does that mean that is it subject to how you perform, or like we just go back to what you were previously? How does that
Yeah,
work?
yeah, certainly. So I think quite a lot of doctors have been stepped up over the period, but for me, it was a big step up. So quite a junior registrar to a consultant, and that's to cover the current, absolute mass pandemic which we've all experienced now. So a lot of med students have been stepped up to doctors kind of 4 months early, and I've been stepped up kind of 1.5 years early. So it should have been August 2021, but now it's been February 2020.
Wow.
It's been quite an early step up, and it's been quite common across the country. But it's great news for me because it's a chance to shine really, and a chance to actually get my hands dirty with everything that's been going on and actually learn from the front line.
That's great. I think it'd be really good to kind of go back, as we did previously, onto where this all started. And the thing that I found kind of most astounding was that you mentioned you were like 5 years old when you first like wanted to be a doctor. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so when I was 5, I always wanted to kind of, go into a scientific field. So whether that was botany or looking at animals, zoology, or veterinary science, medicine was a natural kind of extension of my curiosities. I was very interested in animals and how animals would, walk, and that was quite cool. Sometimes I'd cut up a caterpillar or something and look at its inside. Looking back at it now, it's quite gross actually, but doing things that 5-year-olds would do back in them days when people will have to play outside. And then, so it was something science related. And then as that was 5 years old, and then I thought medicine's good as well. It involves speaking to people, it involves treating people, it involves communicating at people's time of need. So that kind of fitted in well with my kind of natural disposition, which was quite a talkative and empathic person. So it started at 5. It kind of cultivated and nurtured itself over the next few years, and it kind of culminated in me actually doing science A levels at college.
And your kind of background's very kind of you call yourself a kind of deprived childhood on a Sheffield council estate, and I think
Right.
what is really interesting is inspiring that now you're a consultant. What kind of message would you have to yourself now going back, and also to people that are in more difficult situations right now that are maybe struggling for that motivation or desire?
Yeah, so I just want to say, Charles, I'm just going to take this thing off. My advice for anyone who's, my advice, is it recording? Yeah?
Yep.
So my advice for anyone who's come from a socio-demographically less privileged background is to set your goals high, is, not to set your dreams with your surroundings. So if you're living in a deprived area like I was in a council estate, your dream shouldn't be to be the richest in the council estate. It should be to be the richest in the city, or the richest in the county, or the richest in the country. It's to be the best in the country at what you do, not just necessarily the best in the area, because the area will be deprived. So your goals and dreams and aspirations are certainly much higher than the area you find yourself in. And so for me, it's goal setting. Your goals have to be ridiculously high. Your bar has to be set ridiculously high. And if your goals and dreams don't scare you, that's one thing I always say. If your goals, aspirations, desires, and dreams don't scare you, or people don't laugh at them, then they are way too short.
And so now you've become an interim consultant, for want of a better phrase. What's the scary dream for you? Dare you say it?
Well, scary dream for me is, as a consultant, it's kind of you are the pinnacle of your career. So there's nothing more you can progress. But for me, from now, it's to get something called a substantive post. So when I finish my training, after I step down in the summertime, go back to becoming a registrar in medicine, finish my training and get a substantive post. So that's a long-term, lifelong contract with the NHS as a consultant in medicine. And that's one thing. The second thing, a lot of my interests and aims and ambitions lie beyond medicine. So it's to kind of make my company the world's biggest wellness brand, and I think that's something which is a personal desire for me, because the NHS is good. Obviously, we all, without it, we wouldn't be able to breathe or live, because how many babies are delivered daily, how many people need NHS when they're unwell. So it's literally from life to death, from A to Z, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, you need the NHS. But for me, it won't be my legacy. My legacy is going to be in my venture, which is we can talk about that later, endurance, and I think my goal is to make that a instantly recognizable multinational wellness.
That makes sense. And something that we talked about last time, which I think is really great to bring up again, and I've actually since then talked to a nurse over in the States and some various other people in the medical profession. And something that is a common theme is that your training versus actual reality are so different. In fact, poles apart. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. So there seems to be a big disconnect between what you train for, 5 years in medicine, 3 years in nursing, and what you see. Whereas, for instance, with dentistry, you study dentistry and teeth don't change. Teeth will be the same. Obviously, I'm simplifying it there, but with medicine, things change, conditions change. Coronavirus wasn't a pandemic last year, it's a pandemic now. Things change, and we aren't necessarily prepared for pandemics as such. So I'm giving quite a contemporary example with the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak. But just generally, before this and after this, patients don't necessarily present the way you read about them. People can have a heart attack, and it could be something called a silent MI, which is a silent myocardial infarction, whereby they've had a heart attack but they've experienced no pain. So patients can be very different to what you see in the textbooks. And secondly, medicine changes. Evidence is always changing. So they say when you've graduated, 50% of the medical knowledge you have is out of date. It's constantly expanding. And sometimes it's incorrect. Some of the stuff you learned in medical school is factually incorrect. It's been disproven later on. The trick is kind of discerning and discerning which of the 50% is correct and which is incorrect. So I think that's why, as a doctor, you have to be constantly on the ball, constantly reading and researching and appraising and critiquing papers and research out there.
Another thing that, again, a couple of medical professionals have mentioned, and I've asked the question of, and particularly in the time we're in now, it's probably quite relevant, is when you have incredibly stressful days, and particularly right now, I'm sure that's like right at its peak. How do you disconnect? How do you come home and kind of find a way to be with your family that you're not thinking about the terrible things you've seen during the day or the news you've had to give to somebody that's, potentially heartbreaking? How do you do that?
Yeah, a great question, Charles. Really good question. I think that applies to a lot of frontline workers, not just doctors and nurses, but ambulance staff, paramedics, firemen, etc., policemen even. They where we and they see lots of traumatic experiences, stabbings, unwell people, breaking the news of cancer. It is quite daunting, and it takes an emotional toll. The best way that I switch off, and it's not for everyone, but for me certainly, I turn my phone off as soon as I get home, flight mode, spend time with the family, and I try my best not to watch TV. I watch TV, but try my best not to watch any news. News for me, it's regurgitating a lot of the same things that I've seen in the day anyway. And I think if you're watching news in the evening and going to work in the mornings and daytime, you've got 24 hours of just constantly being bombarded with information and trauma. So I try not to watch any news. Try to watch, if I can, if I've got time, something completely absurd. Yesterday I was watching something about Caribbean kind of shark diving. For me that was a bit of escapism. We can't go on holiday for the next few months, but looking at nice sunny beaches and nice blue waters, it's quite a nice form of escapism. So I turn my phone off, try not to answer any work-related emails or queries. As you probably can imagine, I'm getting bombarded left, right, and centre with questions about, has my mum got it? Doctor, can I speak to you? And I just reply to my messages in the morning when I wake up.
I think that's a really smart thing. I think something that I, on a different kind of form, but like as an entrepreneur, struggle with as well is, your phone's constantly on, you're constantly getting messages. And I was trying to kind of get into a routine of getting up earlier and falling asleep faster. And one of the things that I found, or from researching, is like this thing, blue light, right, which is slightly different. Sorry. Yeah, blue light in respect of, looking at technology all the time, it has an effect on our bodies where we believe from years and years before we need to be alert right now because the day's just started when actually it hasn't. And that's why lots of people struggle to sleep at night. So I've kind of stopped looking at my phone and stuff for like an hour at least before bed. And then the second thing is a little bit side point, but to get up early, what I found the simplest hack is literally moving my phone away from somewhere where I can snooze it. So that you just have to. So like small things.
Exactly. There's a really good book by actually a Nottingham, well, he's a professor in Harvard now, but he studied at Nottingham, where I work at the moment, or where I live anyway. It's called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Great book. And
Why We Sleep.
Yeah, Why We Sleep, yeah. It came
I'll
out
put that
last
in
year,
the show notes.
Fantastic book. And I think, some of the listeners should certainly have a read or have a listen to that because it's available on audiobook as well on Audible. Anyway, he talks about lack of sleep, especially with today's modern day hectic lifestyles of having smartphones and laptops and everything at night time. Our melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, it should be increasing after 6 p.m. But ours is doing the inverse. It's actually being suppressed as we get into the evening because we've got bright lights on, we're watching TV, and we're on our phone. At the same time, we're on our laptop, our laptops as well. So that's 4 kind of artificial lights there, and we're tapping away and we're speaking and WhatsApping, and that's why Facebook and Twitter have a blue logo, blue light. It's it's designed to keep you awake. So Facebook and Twitter have blue logos because they know from a neurohormonal point of view, blue lights will keep the human mind awake. We're constantly consuming, aren't we? We're constantly consuming information. And for me, it's a bit different because I'm always responding to questions. And responding to questions takes time. Honestly, it takes so much of my brain power. I need to think. I can't give just shovey advice. It has to be quite considered, thought out advice to someone's mother or someone's uncle who's perhaps experiencing symptoms now of possible COVID-19.
Yeah.
I can't just say yes, he or she has it or doesn't. I have to think about it quite thoughtfully, and for me, that's just never stopping. So, conscious effort to turn my phone off at 6 p.m. as soon as I get home.
And that's great.
Yeah.
Great advice. And then coming on to your other life, I suppose, and you did mention this before. We'll come on to Endurance, your current company, in a moment. But before we get there, you had a stint on Dragon's Den, and you had a product called Date Smoothie. And I watched it back the other day, and it was like, I think it got 500,000 views now on the video, and it was really smart. I mean, I've mentioned this before in other videos and other kind of things I've been involved in, but I think The Apprentice of stuff that I've been involved in, Dragon's Den that you've been involved in, unfortunately creates this view that the business world's all sharp and horrible and people aren't collaborative, and that's just not the case.
Cutthroat, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it actually deters people rather than encourages them to take things up. So I think you got a hard kind of roasting there, but the idea is cool. Do you want to talk about what that was?
Yeah, so the idea basically came about from my work as a junior doctor, kind of rushing out of the house, trying to make it in time for the 7:30 start that we used to have in the morning. And that often meant going to work on an empty stomach. And when you're on your feet all day, when you're in a hot theatre, which is temperature, regulated to make it high temperature, and it's quite airy and stuffy in there. So I fainted one day, and that was as a direct result of dehydration and low blood sugar levels. So that was directly a consequence of me not eating anything in the morning. So I started taking smoothies to work, and the commercially available smoothies were rather high in sugar, and I felt that after consuming them, yes, I was full for half an hour, but kind of mid-morning, 11 o'clock, I'll be starving, absolutely hungry. So they weren't doing anything for me in terms of alleviating hunger for a long period. They were hitting the spot initially, but as the day went on, I was even more hungry than I was in the morning. So I started making my own, and that was kind of a home recipe. Me and my wife started making them, soaking almonds overnight, and just experimenting with a lot of flavors. And we bought a commercial blender. We're quite lucky because it was a Black Friday deals, so we managed to get an expensive blender. One of them big ones you see in Starbucks and Costa that make the frappes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We got one of them. I think it was £1,000, but we got it for half price.
Wow.
It was Black Friday, really, really good deal. Otherwise, we wouldn't have, we wouldn't have afforded it. It's quite a lot to spend on a essentially a smoothie maker.
Yep.
started making them in batches. I started taking them to work, and I felt so much, so energized and kind of reinvigorated after having these smoothies. And they were wholesome. I knew what was in there. Trying to get all the ingredients, free range organic almonds and almond milk and soy milk, etc. We put a lot of oats in there, and the whole reason of date, because they were very bland. It was very much like porridge, and porridge, as you know, requires a bit of blueberries or a bit of honey. So my sweetener for the smoothies was dates. So I used kind of free range dates from the Middle East, and they were big juicy dates. And so we call it date smoothie, but it's also a acronym as well for my Dr. Asif for eating. So it's acronym for my name as well. So I thought it was quite clever branding there. And then to cut a long story short, it did well. So I enjoyed it, as did my colleagues, and I started selling them in the kind of doctors' communal areas in the stock booths. And from there onwards, Dragons then contacted me saying, would you like to be in the program? We like your product. We like you as a person. You're very marketable. So I said, yeah, why not? I didn't think I'd get on because on the day there were so many kind of businesses doing auditions, and they were much more established than me. They were much more marketable than me. But yeah, luckily, I stood my ground, as you saw on the program. I didn't back down, and I think that kind of went a bit viral.
It was really cool as well. You had like this container at the bottom of the bottle where you'd have nuts in as well, which I thought was really smart. And I think to this day still is a really cool product. So then the next thing that came about was the sports and exercise medicine. Was that before, after, or kind of in the same time frame?
Yeah, it was slightly after actually. So once I did Date Smoothie, we stopped producing them. I did my exams to get into sports medicine, and then I did that for kind of 1.5 years. Finished in February last year, really. February this year. I finished my training in that, and that was afterwards. That was more kind of combining my knowledge of personal training with medicine. So seeing patients with general muscular problems as well, doing injections, doing ultrasound, doing MRI scans as well. So that was quite a marriage of my two interests, so health and wellness with medicine. And that was up till a few weeks ago.
And you also were working with like elite athletes at Loughborough and various other places, right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so I was working at the National Centre in Sport and Exercise Medicine in Loughborough, which is a government set-up building after the 2012 Olympics in London to make the nation fitter. And so they set up the National Centre in Sheffield, Loughborough, and in London to kind of encourage people to participate in sport. As we know, the more sport you play, there'll be more injuries. So to set up these national kind of centres to prevent injury and to treat people with muscular problems. So strains and sprains. And so I worked with quite a lot of elite athletes. I worked with rowers who rowed for England and in GB at the Olympics. I've worked with a lot of triathletes as well, a lot of tennis players, swimmers, so lots of elite athletes. And from them, I learned a lot. And that kind of took me on to my next venture, which was endurance.
Yeah, so that's a nice little segue. So you founded this company called Endurance. You call it a multi-dimensional kind of health and well-being company. Part of which is nutritional, part of which is IV vitamin therapy. For those who don't know what IV vitamin therapy is, what is it? What are the benefits? And I know it's certainly something bigger in America right now, but it's certainly in its infancy here, I believe.
Yes, certainly. So IV vitamin therapy is having your nutrients and your vitamins and minerals through a drip instead of having them by a tablet form. A lot of people, as we know, are not very compliant with tablets. Firstly for taste. Secondly, if you've got diarrhea or absorption problems, we know that a lot of the vitamins aren't necessarily absorbed by the gut and then sent across the body into the required tissues. So IV vitamin therapy is very big in America for people who are busy executive lifestyles, entrepreneurs, usually people who are jet setting and they need something for their hangovers or for their jet lag or just general hydration and wellness. So it's certainly, like you said, Charles, very much in its infancy in the UK, but it's had massive press in America over the last 5 to 10 years, where people are doing it, in Las Vegas, for instance, in New York, the big cities, especially in California, the state of California. It's a wellness capital of the world, really. We call it the Sunshine State, I think. Everyone's out having their drips and having their smoothies, etc. So the benefits are kind of, it depends what drip you get, but some of them are hydration, some of them are improved skin brightness, so to speak. Some of them are general detox and wellness. Some of them are kind of immune boosting, especially now with the whole pandemic, there's been quite a lot of demand for that, and I'm doing like kind of 3 to 4 times weekly vitamin C drips, which are just immune boosting.
So what's the cost of like a drip? How does it work?
Yeah, so the cost to me obviously is the purchase of the raw ingredients from the pharmacy, but the cost to the customer is fixed depending on what drip they get. So the vitamin C drip starts at 75 for 8 grams, or 150 for the 12 grams, or the big doses which people are wanting now are the 25 grams of vitamin C, and they can go all the way up to £199. Some of the vitamin B drips people are asking for as well, just for kind of energy and mood, they start at kind of £40 for just a quick drip as well. So it depends on whether you want a booster, which is a smaller drip, a more concentrated drip, or whether you want the full 1 hour protocol, which is a slow drip, and the effects can last a bit longer as well.
And what's is the frequency depending upon obviously the size of the dosage and sort of person that there is, but is there a kind of recommended frequency? Are there kind of rules and laws that govern this yet, or is it really not happened just yet?
Yeah, so I think in the UK it's not very governed, and that's one thing I want to stress, and that's why it's important for doctors or medical professionals to do IV vitamin therapy. Now you are seeing a lot of people who are just doing the course online or in person, and then starting their vitamin drip company, because vitamin drips aren't classed as medicines. So because they are, you can't, it's classed as a nutrient. It's not classed
Right.
as medicine. Some of them are, like for instance, magnesium or iron is a medicine. Vitamin D is a medicine, whereas vitamin B and vitamin C aren't medicines. It's very much quite a complex and grey area. Regulation is key, and I think in terms of frequency, going back to your question, Charles, frequency depends on what the person wants. If the person wants kind of immunity boosting all the year round, it's better to get the vitamin C drop kind of every 12 weeks, every 3 months. Some people just want it in December when the winter period is peaking and there's loads of viruses around, and they're feeling generally weak and lethargic, so they want a bit of a pick me up with a vitamin C drop. We do that once a year in December time. It's a bit like the annual flu jab. You have it once a year. So some people, they're traveling, they're shooting, they're modeling all over the country. A lot of the people I see are Instagram influencers, Love Island, ex-Love Island people. They're constantly shooting all over the country. They've asked me to give them trips in their hotel rooms, which I've done, and that's usually every kind of 3 months or so.
That makes sense. And I guess it would be remiss of me not to kind of come on to the coronavirus and the impact. So obviously we know from what you said meant before that you've been kind of temporarily floated, which is phenomenal. And congratulations for that. What's it actually like right now for you on the front line? Are things as bad as the media are painting it to be? Are they worse in terms of testing kits, into the PPE? Like, what's the general kind of mood as well in the NHS?
Yeah, so I think the media are doing a good job at the moment. I think it is very topical. So the media are covering right in depth. Especially if you go to Channel 4, they're doing daily programs about it as well, and obviously BBC and ITN are doing equally as good a job as showing what it's like in terms of numbers. And obviously Boris's daily press conferences as well at 3 p.m. are quite informative for the public. But what it's like on the front line is that, but worse. So people are much sicker, people are much more unwell, and one thing I've noticed, especially working as a consultant for the last few days, and before that as a medical registrar, is people can acutely deteriorate very quickly. So people 41, 55, youngish, middle-aged people, they've got horrible looking x-rays and they're well, having a bit of oxygen, but overnight they can become really unwell and what we call hypoxic, which means in medicine having low oxygen levels. So they can deteriorate very rapidly, and I think that's something which is probably not portrayed in the media. People are more unwell than the usual pneumonias or flus. To be honest, in March and April, you don't actually see many pneumonias or flus because it's usually a winter seasonal viral infection. But now it's April time, and we're getting an increasing number of cases. I don't think it's going to plateau anytime soon, and we're getting more and more deaths. And we actually don't know when the peak is going to be because we're getting more and more reports of deaths. So on the front line, it is quite busy. It is quite challenging and demanding, and more importantly for the patients as well. It's a scary time because patients are uncertain what they do. They can't have any visitors. It's completely isolated. When the only contact they have is with doctors and nurses. They can't speak to their families. They can't see relatives. It's very a lonely time for them as well. But like I say, you know, we're in this together. It's a once in a lifetime pandemic, and I think from this we're only going to grow as a nation.
I think something that isn't maybe talked about that much, and in your role right now, are you covering just coronavirus patients, or are you covering the whole plethora of different people? Because obviously there's still people that were ill in any case, whether it be a disease they've had or whether they have cancer or whatever else. Like, that's not really been discussed, is it? That there's more than just coronavirus. Obviously, not the world hasn't just stopped for coronavirus.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, so my current role as a consultant is purely looking at coronavirus patients. So I've got a ward of 28 patients. We're usually almost fully occupied, 25, 26 patients sometimes. And yeah, they all got coronavirus, but obviously they've got other underlying health problems as well. Like some of them have broken their hips, come to hospital. Whilst in hospital, they've developed coronavirus. Some of them come from a nursing home and had pneumonia from coronavirus and have ended up in hospital. So the whole ward is assigned to coronavirus patients, completely isolated patients.
And do you have like the correct PPE, or is it still like, as it's been reported, like it's not coming through as thick and fast as it ought to be?
Yeah, so PPE is very patchy. Depends where you work. I work on a coronavirus ward, which is just completely for COVID-19 patients, and that's not been the best. That's been patchy. It's kind of only enough for me as a consultant, whereas in ITU it's much more kind of there's kind of much more kind of supply of PPE there. And I think ITU need it because in ITU you've got what we call high aerosol generating procedures, such as intubations and nebulizers and high flow oxygen machines. So they're kind of more at risk than the general wards where we work on. But so I think they're a better staff. But the kind of whole rhetoric is to increase PPE across the whole levels of care. Like in China, like in South Korea, which have reduced rates markedly, they started doing that by increasing PPE provision to all doctors, regardless of where they're working.
And I think a nice way to kind of maybe lead this is there's quite a lot of positive things, silver linings maybe coming out of COVID-19, whether it be increased funding, reduced bureaucracy. What are some of the things that you've seen that have been an improvement from previously, and what are things that you'd like to see taken through after we're out the kind of worst of this?
Right. So yeah, I think with any public sector system, there's huge amounts of red tape and paperwork and bureaucracy. I've seen massive reductions now. So as a consultant, when I'm discharging patients, there's much less paperwork, much less. So there's something called a fast track discharge when someone's unwell, they're confirmed positive for coronavirus. Previously, if we weren't in the midst of a pandemic, people would have been discharged fast track. It's called fast track, but it never was fast. It would take weeks and weeks to get the community team to see them, district nurses, carers, etc. Now people are getting discharged on the same day, and the paperwork's being sorted out once they're at home. So I think there's a lot of slashing of waiting times in terms of getting people home, carers coming in. So bureaucracy being slashed. Another thing is GP appointments as well. So a lot of them have been made online. So sorry, via like what we're doing at the moment via Zoom. A lot of GP consultations have occurred via online platforms such as Babylon Health and all different platforms out there. So I think that shows that the model can work. Consultations. What coronavirus has done over the last few weeks has accelerated, I think, this whole rolling out of remote GP appointments by 10 years. It's kind of accelerated everything. It's expedited quite a lot of developments within medicine, and I think mainly for me working in the ward, it has been slashing of paperwork, getting patients home early, whereas previously they would have taken days and days and days to get home because of social services, etc. And whilst they're in hospital, they probably would have got another infection and another illness, and that would have made them stay in hospital. And I think that kind of delay in discharge was a real big strain on NHS resources, and I think we've got to the bottom of that finally.
I think that's a really fantastic place to leave it. And I guess me and on behalf of the whole nation, thank you very much to you and everyone that's in your position working in the front line. We can't even imagine what that's like right now. So thank you very much. And also thank you for giving us the time and giving us some fantastic insights as well. And also wish you the best with your business. And I will definitely pop some of the links into the description to have a look at. Some really interesting stuff you're doing there.
Cheers, Charles. Thank you for your time, and all the best. Yeah,
Thank you too.